being chased, thrown on the run, and it is caught. Touchdown, Keenan Allen. What a grab.
That's what I'm talking about. Hey, that's what I'm talking about. That's the warrior spirit right there, boy.
Huge sack by Joey Bosa.
90-yard touchdown. 90-yard touchdown.
It's going to be picked off at the 8-yard line by Derwin James.
Herbert sets his feet, takes a shot downfield, has Guyton. Caught! Touchdown, Chargers!
That's the greatest throw I've ever seen.
Yes, and welcome to the bye-week edition of the Thunder Down Under Chargers Football Podcast. Yeehaw! The Chargers Charger, the trade deadline. Andy, your host here, joined sprightly as always by me good mates Jack and Alistair. Boys, how are we doing this fine bye-week? What's the good word?
Oh, not too much. Had a nice weekend. My brother-in-law, sister-in-law, and nephew came down, which was lovely, or came across to Adelaide, which was wonderful. But it's a busy weekend and just almost at the end of school, so can't wait. And can't wait to watch some Chargers football this week.
Yeah, it's nice. Sort of nice to have a week. We were talking about this, Al, during the week. It's nice to have a bye week where you just don't have to worry about the Chargers just shit in the bed and just continuing rubbish form and ruining your week from a Monday evening onwards. But you also just are really hungry to watch the Chargers play, so we'll be chomping at the bit. We're going to join one another's company on Monday night our time and watch the Falcons game. How have you been this week though, Al?
Very well, man. I know that it seems like we do this every year. As the trade deadline approaches, we start getting excited about all the moves that could be made, working out cap hits, cap consequences. We've got to know by now, guys, it's just wasted energy. And, well, it's just not in our DNA. But that's okay. We trust our wide receiver trio of Bandy, Palmer, and DeAndre Carter, and we move on.
Cool.
We're going to have to. As always, a nod to our wonderful listeners. Guys, thanks for riding through this rough patch of the football season with us and throughout the season. We're all about talking Chargers here. Having you all lend your ears is fantastic for us. Please, if you haven't already, quick favour, just hit the like and subscribe buttons to stay up to date with our show. So, gents, a bit to get through today. Before we preview the Dirty Birds game, we're at the midway point of the year and, look, a bit of a timely week off for the Bolts to reset and hopefully see out the remainder of the season with a bit of gusto. Jack's cooked up a bit of a fun way to dissect what we've seen thus far and how Alistair and I are grading certain things. We're a bit in the dark about it, so that could be a bit of a fun way to see what we've seen and who's responsible or not. We'll look in depth at what we're likely to be facing come Sunday afternoon in Atlanta. And Ali Boy has teed up a little summer hashtag TDU mailbag to finish us off. It's a bye-week discussion, so Jack, take it away.
Cool. Yeah, thanks, Andy. Awesome intro. I have done some reading over the last couple of weeks in the bye week, and I reread one of my favourite books about the NFL, and that was Bill Walsh's most vaunted The Score Takes Care of Itself. And that's about his kind of learnings, and he wrote it after his time with the 49ers, and it applies to life, it applies to organisations, it applies to your work, etc. So I thought I am going to run a little bit of a quiz in true teacher fashion. I've given myself some grading bands, and what I'm going to get Andy and Alistair to do is I'm going to read out a statement from Bill. Well, he's got about 18 standards of performance. And we're going to apply these standards of performance to Brandon Staley. Now, this is a complete gut feel for Andy and Alistair. They're going to give a score 1 to 5. 5 being that they believe that Brandon Staley is hitting that really, really well, so doing very well at it. Number 1 being not so good. So, are we all cool with those rules, gentlemen?
Far away, boss.
Yes, sir.
Good. Awesome. So, at the end of it, what we're going to do is then have a look at the scores, and you're gonna have implicitly graded Brandon Staley's season based on these criteria, and hopefully that gives us sort of a framework for a further discussion. So remember, no clarifying the questions. You've just got to go straight with your gut feel.
You're First all one. About a gut feel.
No, we are too.
Well, this is good for the listeners. If you've got your pen and paper out, listeners, get ready to jot down some scores.
Yeah, so if you're a listener, like think in your head, 5 being really good, 1 being not so good. Brandon Staley, what do you think? Here we go. Number 1, exhibit a ferocious and intelligently applied work ethic directed toward continual improvement. A 1, 2, 3, or 4, or 5. Mm-hmm. Number 2, demonstrate respect for each person in the organisation and the work he or she or they do. Number 3, be deeply committed to learning and teaching, which means increasing your or our own expertise. Number 4, be fair. Simple one, that one. How fair do you think Brandon Staley's been this year? Number 5, this is another simple one. Demonstrates character. Number 6, honour the direct connection between details and improvement. Number 7, relentlessly seek improvement. Number 8, show self-control, especially when it counts most, under pressure. Ooh, that's a good one. That's a good one. Number 9, demonstrate and prize loyalty. That can be both good and bad, I believe. Number 10, use positive language and have a positive attitude. Number 11, be willing to go the extra distance for the organisation. Number 12, deal appropriately with victory and defeat, adulation and humiliation. Number 13, promote internal communication that is both open and substantive, especially under stress. A couple more. 14, seek poise in myself and those I lead. Number 15, put the team's welfare and priorities ahead of my own. Number 16, maintain an ongoing level of concentration and focus that is abnormally high. Number 17, make sacrifice and commitment the organisation's trademark. And then number 18, the leader must exhibit the principles, code of conduct and behaviour that he is asking others to emulate. So there we go. If the listeners are thinking it is a great book, it's called The Score Takes Care of Itself. The title kind of gives away what it's about. It's about if you get your back-end organisation organised and structured correctly with the right culture and the right environment of learning and teaching, it doesn't matter what happens on game day, the score takes care of itself. So I ask Andy and Alistair now to perhaps tally up your scores, if you can, quickly in your head, and give me your scores when you are ready. Some of the questions whilst they're doing that, listeners, you can ask yourselves, or we can ask of Brandon Staley, how well are people embracing him and the culture? Are you willing to confront and potentially remove those who do not embrace your standards? What kind of tone are you setting for the program? Are you the hardest worker? Who are your team's locker room leaders? Which of your athletes and staff have your back? Etc. 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 So, Andy or El, who's ready for a score for me?
Yeah, I've got one. I've graded Coach Staley 75 out of 90.
Wow. Okay, so you've given him, in my grading scale, you've put him in the brilliant range, which is an A. So you've graded him an A. I wasn't expecting such a high score. Andy, what about you?
I've given Coach Staley a 65.
65. So in my grading scheme here, you've given a B plus, which is solid. Just to let the listeners know, anything below a 50 was anything above 50 was competent. Between 50 and 65, emerging was around a D, and then 20 and below was go fuck yourself. So we're really lucky that none of us have scored. We haven't scored below 20. Anything that stuck out in terms of your scoring, Alistair, I might start with you. That you gave Staley either a 5-4 or a 1-4.
Well, there was a kind of a natural connection between a lot of those questions. It was a lot about a commitment to learning and development, humility, leading by example, listening, and I think Staley excels in all of those areas. Like, he is a committed learner, and no one could reasonably doubt his work ethic. and his character. I think those shine through as his signature strengths. So, and I love this exercise because if you buy into Bill Walsh's kind of categorization, and why not, given the success he had, it would lead you to believe that Staley possesses the traits and processes that hopefully will lead to long-term winning. And now's a fantastic time to reflect on that, because we'll get into it as we break it down. There's a lot of negative, almost antipathy towards the Chargers at the moment by Chargers fans. And we'll explore the reasons for that as we go. But that was a nice exercise for me to come back to the core traits and principles of our head coach. And I think he's fantastic in those respects.
Yeah, what do you think, Andy?
Yeah, well, I think the questionnaire was strongly character-based. And as Alice said, he does possess all those characteristics that make a good leader and show want for self-improvement. It's not a quiz about get the result, you know. And like you said, if you've got these characteristics, then the results will come. So if you're putting a year and a half, this year especially, ravaged with injuries and dealing with a lot of noise from the outside about we're underperforming, why aren't we 6-1 or 7-0 or some crazy stuff like that? Why didn't we make any trades? Because you got no idea about where our contracts are at the moment, with a lot of money going into key players and the need for draft capital to just get a gun for hire and lose draft picks and have to cut players because we can't afford them. So, look, I do think he's a great character and a good leader, and hopefully, if you do buy into that, the results will come.
Yeah, I think Alistair and Andy, you both hit the nail on the head. Is we as supporters, on whether it's on Twitter or on social or any other social media, we're so concerned about wins and losses. We're so concerned about the disparity between how well we played in some games and then how well we don't play. How we don't play well in others. And I think that was a really good exercise for me after revisiting that book to go, well, there are a lot of other things that go into the on-field performance, not just what we see every week. And I think I gave Staley, I did this quiz myself, and I gave him a 72. So that's sitting at an A-. And if we're going off of what Bill Walsh, and arguably he's one of the most prominent, if not the most prominent of those sort of 80s and 90s sort of coaches, a lot of it is not necessarily about wins and losses. It's about getting your culture right, and then on the field it just takes care of itself. So yeah, you're right. A year and a half, Andy, is not enough to see these results. I don't think and I've got some other stats later that'll be quite interesting. But let's just, I guess, go back into what we normally do, interesting and important. I think to sort of touch on the character, I think one of the most important things we've seen is the progression in our rookies, and I think they are growing. I think that Salia and Johnson are the two best examples of that. And so I feel like players are getting better. Are we getting better as units? Perhaps not just yet, but there are signs of improvement, which, is a testament to Staley's teaching. Is everyone going to be an A+ straight off the bat? No, it takes time. So that's kind of how I'm going to open up the discussion from here. What say you, Al?
I think that's right. I think it's right that we can find individual instances of players who might have improved. Solia's a really good one, right? Like, would you have believed that this guy who comes in as a 6th round rookie at the moment is graded as PFF's 23rd ranked offensive tackle in the league, left and right? He's the highest graded rookie. I mean, fantastic. But we just did a grading scale from Bill Walsh. Here's a different PFF grading scale that's more linked to on-field results. And this is why there are some causes of concern. Right now, we're the 27th graded overall team in the league. The defense is graded 28th. The pass blocking, 23rd. The run blocking, 32nd. The defense, 25th. So they're suggesting that on the field, our record is actually belying us. We have been fortunate to win 4 games, and when those numbers start to bank up, that a lot of negatives, you do feel there's a risk of the floor falling out from under the team, and that the losses will start to come, because maybe we deserve more losses than we have. There are a lot of little things to unpack there, what we can do. But maybe a first question I'll throw, Andy, since we've got those results, which are what they are. Last week you were talking about how do we shake things up, what can we do? And you started talking about something like play calling. Well, talk to us about, would you have made a move if you were the coach, either at a coordinator position or at a play calling decision? What would have you done over the bye, Coach Andy?
I think it could be a little bit interesting to have Joe Lombardi step back a bit and have Shane Day step up into the play calling role. I think he has a really good relationship with Justin Herbert. He brings something different, comes from San Fran, the wide zone offense, Shanahan offense. That's a start from me. What about you, Jack? What do you think on that?
Well, we've seen it across the league, not only this season, but in seasons past, where the head coach has been either calling the offensive or the defensive plays. I have a feeling that we should ask Brandon Staley to, if we're thinking about the feel and he's this great leader, we're grading him an A and he's committed to learning, perhaps he's trying to wear too many hats on game day, and perhaps he needs to step away from the defensive play calling and actually go back to his gut, go back to the this intense, positive, 4th down, go for it kind of gunfighter attitude that we saw last year, that we kind of hung our hat on as a team, and there was that identity there. At the moment, the identity is fluid. I can't seem to put my hand on it. And to sort of go back, I guess to link my first important point was that the rookies seem to be improving and players seem to be improving. I still think a challenge of this team is that the strength of the team still remain individuals. They're not positional groups. And I know that might be being harsh, but we still hang our hat on. We hope that JC Jackson has a great year. We hope that SJD fixes the run defense. We hope that Austin Eckler gets his 20 touchdowns. We hope that Joey Bosa plays. We hope that Khalil Mack plays. So we're not necessarily looking at our depth in that, or I guess in positional groups. And we're obviously having to do that because of the challenge to injury. So, Alistair, should we remain hopeful as a supporter base? I believe that we should.
Straight to it.
I'm usually very optimistic, and the listeners who are part of Bolts from the Blue, I mean, you all tend to view me as almost over the top optimistic, and some think I'm on a next level of lunacy. But my optimism's really been tested. I thought I'd feel better over the bye week. But then, the Keenan Allen news broke this morning, and those good feelings, for me, they've dissipated a bit because we just had a brutal loss to the Seahawks. The Falcons, as we'll get into later, have those hallmarks. They're just good enough at a few things that they're going to pose a big challenge. And right now, it's hard to feel too excited about a receiving group that is missing Keenan and Mike and a few other stars. And weird vibes around the team up to the bye. You just don't know how they're going to come out. Is it going to be Houston revisited from last year? Or are we going to be sitting here next week so excited that the team turned the corner and are sitting at 5-3? I don't know. I can't wait to watch it. But I can't say right now I'm feeling good about it. I'm actually feeling a bit scared, to be honest.
For the listeners, just as this is behind the curtain here, Alistair all week has been saying us, we're not going to lose this game. This is it. We're not going to lose. We can't lose. We cannot lose. We cannot lose. So I'm not sure where this backflips come from, but interesting. Anyway, a bit of a backflip.
You said yesterday that cappuccino fixed you. I think this morning's cappuccino flipped you back.
So there's something in it that poisoned me.
Too much chocolate on top.
Yeah. Well, look, there's lots to talk about. Some things, let's try to break down things we think we can improve on. One that gets spoken a lot about, I'm going to start, things that we need to see change if we're going to get better, perhaps. One is stretching the field. We've got to do something to stop defenses having the confidence to play lots of men in the box, cover one, and it's smothering our running game because they know they're getting away with it. We don't have anyone who can stretch the field. Justin Herbert, his yards per attempt is sitting at 6.5. There are only 4 quarterbacks who've had less than that in the league. His average depth of target is at 6.8. Again, there's only 4 quarterbacks in the league with lower average depth of target. Is it the ribs? Is it something else? But if we're going to change our fortunes around, I think we need to see that happen more. We need to air the ball out, throw the ball to help our running game. I'll start off with that. Andy, what do you think we might need to do a little bit better to transform our fortunes?
Well, maybe it is the lack of personnel that's inhibiting us. It's a poor depth group, really, because they're all relatively similar skill sets. And we don't have an explosive guy. Guyton was the closest, and he's gone for the season. So that's probably where also a lot of the banging on the walls came from during this trade period. Wanting a guy who can do exactly that, stretch the field. For me, it's situational decision making from Staley. I think from offense as well. It's personnel, it's play calling, it's those. We've had the gambling man Staley, just 4th and Staley, going for it. We're 7 of 17 this year, and the guys were going Austin Eckler, 4th and 1 up the middle. What? Like, it blows your mind. And you really just sit there, and that sort of shit sits with you when you turn over on downs after an interception, and you're going, but why did we do that? So yeah, I'd like to see, Jackie, I think you made a really good point, and it's probably more applicable about Staley stepping back. I'm just concerned deeply that Ronaldo Hill cannot do it. I think that's, I don't know, I think that's a concern. If Staley can't be, if Staley's calling the defensive plays, and this is where we are defensively, maybe a change-up would be good, but I'll eat my hat if we improve and Ronaldo Hill's calling plays on defense. That would probably be a more applicable thing, so he could actually focus on the game and orchestrating everything rather than having too many hats on. Al?
Jack, I agree. I don't know if I would make a coordinated change. Because part of that learning and development process Jack was talking about, I'd like to see Lombardi and Staley get together over the bye week, commit to making a number of changes, see what they can do, and then if you need to make a change in maybe 3 weeks' time, do it. Jack, I want you to talk about the offensive line and what's going on, because we've got a new offensive line coach and all of a sudden our O-line sucks. Herbert's being pressured on 35.7% of dropbacks, yet he's the best in the league in pressure to sack conversion. So Herbert's getting pressured a lot, man. He's just finding a way not to get sacked. Talk to me. What's going on with the O-line?
Well, I've actually got it in my interesting. I have found myself this year as the offensive line not being the whipping boy that it actually has been. So yes, he's getting more pressure. Yes, he's got broken ribs from poor protection. But what can you do when your left tackle goes out for the year? What can you do when Lindsley, who I still believe is the most important, if not, as you pointed out a couple of weeks ago, Alistair, the second most important player on our roster, he's been in and out. Pipkins was trending well. He was trending to be an adequate right tackle. That's all we wanted him to be. After that knee injury, that's really hurt him. Zion Johnson, I believe, has started well, probably plateaued a bit like a rookie should, or you'd expect a rookie to. I saw I did the Chargers at Home documentary. I watched him go back to his middle school and talk to his teacher. That man, give him a contract straight away. If we can have Zion Johnson and Rashawn Slater on that line for the next 10 years, I think we're going to be okay. So that leaves Matt Filer, that leaves Will Clapp, that leaves the depth. I think in years past, and this is where BTFB might call me crazy, in years past I think it would be a dumpster fire. I think we've actually taken a step forward in terms of building that depth. and building the quality. It's just injuries. And I know that's not an excuse to use flippantly, but it is. And I think that the play design and the way that Herbert is throwing the ball, the ribs have really hurt him. I just don't think it's been a great start. I personally have liked the offensive line, and I'm going to be positive about that because we don't have Trey Pipkins. Being left tackle, we don't have Storm Norton on the field. We don't have Scott Quessenberry there. There's depth. We're okay. It's going to be all right. I truly believe that.
All right.
Is it a case of Lombardi just saying to Herbert, this is the play call, but your protection's going to fuck you, so we've made the check down real easy, and that's just all it is. Like, don't even bother. Watching our offense at times is like watching a learner driver trying to get a manual car on a hill start, first go.
Look at some of your driving escapades when you first started off driving, mate.
In the good old
I wasn't
VW
too bad at the
Golf.
old hill start. I made a bit of noise, a bit of smoke, but...
But it must be very difficult, because one of my changes that I would have brought on is about trying to find some kind of identity. What are we? Are we a team that gets Herbert to throw the ball 57 times a game? Or are we going to commit to it? And is Lombardi going to tell his offensive line to go, I need you to be road graders. I want you to go out there and hit bodies. Or are we trying to do everything we can to protect Justin Herbert? Because those are two very different mindsets.
Yeah,
Those are two very different mindsets.
How do we have the third most pass attempts in the NFL when our quarterback is battling fractured ribs? The reason is because we've been going down early in games in a couple of the bad losses, right? So needed to get back into it. Or we've tried to run the ball and it's just not working at all. So they're going, well, we've got to try win this football game. Next minute, 50 pass attempts 2 weeks in a row. I agree, it's got to change.
But what do you do though? So if you're the offensive line coach, obviously protecting Justin Herbert's probably up there. It's number one. And so you put your time in at training, you put your time in the film room of going, okay, let's look at our pass blocking snaps. Let's make sure that we're covering that. What gets left out is the run game. Perhaps. I mean, that's an assumption that I'm making. So what are we? What do we want to be? And I think that's, when it comes to identity, that's where we're lacking.
We're going to find out this week, right? Because if suddenly we see more 21 and 22 personnel, Horvath lined up in the backfield with, Spiller behind him, more traditional I formation, or extra offensive linemen. How about you come in with 6 offensive linemen, Norton or Hymas as a 6th, playing even tight end, and just go, we're going to run the ball down your throats, Atlanta. We're going to change it up. We're not going to have another game with 50 pass attempts. We're going to do some stuff to show we're committed to running the ball. Or we come out and we're trying to win the game by throwing it to Jason Moore and Joe Reed. We'll find out either way.
Yep. Oh, good. Yeah, Jack, on your point, it's a big concern for me. There's just the lack of creating, developing and maintaining any sense of sort of identity with this football team. You can't sit and watch a game without stressing, because you're either going to get, the way that it's gone this year is we've won 4 games by, well, excluding the Texans, by within a field goal, just about. And the games that we've lost, bar the Chiefs, where we actually put up a fight, which makes the whole thing... And we were in position to win that game. And then we've lost comprehensively to the Jags and really the Seahawks. It was 21 points with 5 odd minutes to go. It's a concern, and that's a little bit of Staley onto the playing group or his coordinators. Is the message that they're trying to get out the same? Is it consistent?
Can I just jump in? And I did a little bit of research looking at probably some of the best coaches or best young coaches I would consider in the NFL. And I looked at their record over their head coaching career so far. So let me just throw these numbers at you. And when I did this, it made me start to feel a little bit better about where we're at. So I look at Kyle Shanahan, right? I consider Kyle Shanahan and what he does with the 49ers to be incredible. I love watching them play. First year head coach, 6-10. Second year head coach, 4-12. Third year, 13-3 NFC champs. Fourth year, 6-10. Fifth year, 10-7. So those first 2 years, if
Well, Chargers fans would have fired him.
Exactly. Chargers fans would have fine. Look at Sean McDermott. Okay, 9-7 first year. Second year, 6-10. All right. See you later. Bye. See ya. Goodbye. Third year, 10-6. Fourth year, 13-3. Fifth year, 11-6. Look at Mike Vrabel, 9-7 first year. 9-7 second year. Fired. See you later. Bye bye. Third year, 11-5. Fourth year, 12-5. Zach Taylor, 2-14. 4-11. Bye bye.
Well, he should be
Chargers
fired.
fans. But then they go 10-7 at AFC champs.
Yep.
And we look at Matt LaFleur, 13-3, 13-3, 13-4. If it's not for Aaron Rodgers, I don't think he's hanging around.
Yeah.
But guys, look
What's
at
happening
these.
now? No
yeah,
offense,
exactly,
Dan, but-
exactly. But look at around the league. You got to give some time. You got to give at least 3 years. And I know that's defending Staley again. But look, Shanahan, McDermott, Vrabel. And look at the turnaround that they've got, and look at the teams and the identity that they've got now.
And the injuries are real. It's kind of crazy. Staley said in his press conference today, if we weren't a together, sound culture as a football team, we would not be 4-3 today. Look around the league. Look at the Broncos. Look at the Raiders. We would be sitting here with 2 wins, injuries to 6 of our best 10 players, and really saying, fire the coach, fire the coach. We've actually done well to find a way to win 4 games.
We're 4-3.
Yeah.
We've got a over 500 record. But they just want more. They want 6-1, 7-0. Ridiculous stuff. Oh, look what the Eagles are doing. Just it beggars belief to have that kind of approach. You've got to.
But that exercise for me was really intriguing to look at. It's that third year where the pressure really goes. Okay, you've had 24 months to instill that culture, Andy, that identity that we're looking for, that standard of performance. If we want to run it back a little bit, that's what we're looking for. And I mean, listen, we go 10-7, whatever we do. I still think you have to keep Staley around. Otherwise, it's just a waste of time. It's just a waste of 2 years. So give him one more shot. This is a very positive. I'm being very positive. I don't know what's overcome me, but I'm.
No, that's right. I'll swap. I'll go the other way. I'm going to circle back to something you said about the rookies. Well, you know what? We haven't seen 2 of them. And to me, that's unacceptable. We've got to get them in the game.
I completely
Spiller having
agree with you, Al.
one carry. And JT Woods, mate, I don't care how bad he is. Let's have a look. Let's have a few snaps. Just sprinkle him in. I don't see any long-term value in Aloe Gilman and Sony Michel continuing to get snaps in these games where we're playing the quote-unquote easy teams. Get them in there. I want to see that change moving forward.
Agreed.
Oh, I think we need Sony in this game, just because it's Eckler and Spiller.
Yeah.
At least until Kelly's back. But I
Yeah,
see
not
your
like
point.
don't suit up. Yeah, just get them in there, get them involved, get them some touches.
Don't get me wrong. I'd happily see Sony Michel in pass block situations and third and fourth and short yardage situations. Don't get him in the passing game. He's not a receiving back. We're not using him in pass blocking. That's one of his strengths. Just use him right. Where was I going with? I think it was Eric. Is it Eric Smith? Forgive me, from Chargers Weekly, who joins Money. Eric Smith.
Eric Williams.
Anyway, maybe sure. He made a really good point. Staley talks a lot in presses about having the right group of guys on the field. Certain situations. It seems to be a common thread, and I'm going to ask you, Al. Do we see the right group of guys out there? Do we have the right group of guys in the building as far as Staley's concerned? And why, if we do have those guys, why are the right guys not on the field at the right time?
Well, I think a lot of those right guys are off the field because they can't physically get onto it, but through injury.
Well, if
basically.
we're talking about those available,
Of those available,
you can't use.
no.
It would have been better if we had the right guys, like the people who can't play. You play with the cards you
I
dealt.
think you tend to find that the right guys look more like the right guys the longer they play with one another. So I'm looking to see better performance, especially I'm thinking on the defensive side of the ball. I want to see more harmony and harmonious movement towards the ball from guys who've now played together for 8 weeks. I mean, we're talking about an explosive run or pass in every single game, basically. 50 yards, 70 yards, 50 yards. And Jack has said it. I mean, either the teacher's not getting the lessons right or the students aren't receiving the lessons properly. Either way, can't have any more of that, because then maybe they're not the right guys. We should see them develop into the right guys as this season develops.
Yeah. Hey, Andy, I've got a question for you, and I guess this has a bit of more of a positive vibe to it. I believe, through everything that we've talked about so far, there seems to be a solid culture. I personally would not be feeling like this if Lynn or McCoy were coaching.
No.
Are we just more aware because we've been fans for a little bit longer, we've grown up a little bit more? If you put yourself and you had Lynn or McCoy standing up in front of the mic today or yesterday talking, do you feel worse or better?
If one of those two are the coach instead of Brandon Staley at this point in time,
Yes.
I feel a lot worse.
Yeah, exactly.
I feel a lot worse.
Now, some Chargers fans would say, Andy, well, McCoy made the playoffs in his second year and Lynn made the playoffs and had 12 wins in his second year. This guy's got a way better team. He inherited Justin Herbert. At least they got results. Results are all that matter.
That's a fair call. I don't think either Lynn or McCoy inherited particularly bad teams. I'm not going to use the excuse of still meshing together, but Jack, you make the point every week that we show signs of just complete lack of cohesion in all phases of the ball. So it's there. Staley is a man who seems to just absolutely encapsulate. You just believe in him. There's a confidence in what he says, in how he says it, the story from where he's come from, the success he had as the defensive coordinator, leading the number 1 defense in the league. You just never got that from... Lynn was a better speaker to the players, far better relationship builder, and that's a big
good
reason
players
why
coach.
he was put in, for sure.
Yeah. Likeable guy, good coach, good leader. Good leader,
Mike
anyway.
McCoy, man, he's like milk that's been sitting out for a week. I get that. It's nothing. So
Well, he
yeah,
didn't
I feel a
instill
lot-
you with confidence, did he?
No, but I don't think
McCoy.
he's ever... I think he's got self-esteem issues, personally.
I'm going to live... Oh, don't. You go, Jack.
I was going to say, I'm going to reel this back in because I think there's one person that we probably haven't spoken about here. Tommy Big Time, Alistair. Where is Tom Telesco sitting in the realms of a good general manager? I shared earlier in our chat that he's only had one double-digit win season in his tenure as a Chargers GM. Is he a good general manager? And if he is or isn't, what are you looking for? Where does he sit in all this?
Look, we like the off-season, right? We actually loved the off-season. We thought he's probably had his last 2 years may have been his best 2 years, and maybe that's because Staley plays more a role in personnel evaluations. I'd kind of feel that he does, and that kind of begs the question, what is it that Telesco's even doing? We struggle a bit with depth, obviously. I mean, there's just a collection of 3rd and 4th and 5th round picks who just die in the arse, and that kills your football team because they're meant to be your depth pieces and your special teams. So I think that's where they really struggle. We're not making the most of our 3rd, 4th, 5th round picks. Look at Trey McKitty and Josh Palmer so far. I mean, Palmer, there's hope for him, but a blocking tight end in the 2nd pick in the 3rd round, really? Like, really?
Not even like a valuable blocking tight end. He's a penalty monster, and
we'll find out if the team doesn't make the playoffs and Telesco doesn't lose his job. He's just never going to lose his job. It means he's set up essentially as a puppet. He's just a face for decisions that are being made by others, by ownership and by the coaching staff. And he's a guy they just like because he's malleable and he does what they say. I mean, don't have a lot of faith in Tom Telesco. Come on our show, dude. I want to be... go.
I agree with you. It's a massive realisation for me over the last couple of weeks that with what's happening to our roster with injuries and just seeing the guys that are on the field, you know, your Carter, Bandy and Moore, and going, the other guys aren't coming back. This is as good as it gets. And that sort of fear creates anger when you don't make any moves during the trade period. It's understandable with, like I said earlier, the draft capital and the financial repercussions. Our cap is tight as hell, and it's getting bad. It's getting worse in the next few years. But the team's potentially been built pretty poorly. We've pulled wool over our eyes by signing all these marquee players that want to come to LA, play for Coach Staley. We feel like we got them on steals relatively. Shame on us for only really caring about this year, thinking we're going for it this year, we're all in. And now we're not. We can't be. And we're going maybe next year or the year after, but we're going to lose a couple of those pieces.
Yeah.
Well, you kind of wonder whether the NFL is slowly, or the rug that the NFL GM kind of role is slowly being pulled out from underneath Telesco, because we're look at what the Rams do. They just go all in and they deal with the salary cap stuff later. Now, without them trading in the window, I think they've kind of put the white flag up a little bit and gone, well, we might need to regroup a little bit. But the Bills are going for it. The Chiefs are clearly very active. It was the most active trade period in history on that final day, with all sorts of players moving. So, this old school way of building rosters that Telesco perhaps learned in his time in Indianapolis, maybe that's slowly starting to shift. Maybe he needs to be a little bit more aggressive, but who knows? As Alistair said, I think he had a great off-season. We loved it. It's going to be an interesting kind of washout the season.
It's the wool over the eyes, though. We get the message from the head office that we're all in. We're a contender. We're going for it. But then, injuries happen and there's no contingency. We're not built for the next man up kind of aspect of the way this is going. All right, Jack, you've got a few awards that you want to run through. So do you want to start us off with that?
I do, yeah. I have... are we going to go Chargers Offensive MVP, or what are we going to do?
Yep.
Yeah, so I guess we're looking at the Chargers Offensive MVP, and that was given to Alistair. So who have you chosen for the Chargers mid-season MVP?
Drum roll. I'm giving it to Corey Linsley.
Yes.
He is my offensive MVP in the true sense of the word. He is our most valuable player. The minute you take him out, we're disgraceful. You put him back in, we're functional or even really good. So I'm going to give it through Corey Linsley. Please stay healthy.
Like it. I would. I love that pick too. Love seeing an offensive lineman as the offensive MVP. Andy, you've got defensive MVP. Who are you picking?
This was pretty hard, but I went from an all-round perspective, and I've gone with Derwin James Jr.
I thought you were going to go with Khalil.
I knew. I did. It was very close, but I've gone with DJ. So, Derwin James.
He's grading very well across all parts of the field.
He's all over the place. He's just everywhere. Sacks, coverage, all that kind of gear.
Great leader.
Yeah.
I had the Chargers Special Teams MVP. Drum roll for the most important player on the roster, and I've gone with Josh Harris, the long snapper. There we go. I haven't gone J.K. Scott. Yeah.
Lloyd's just thrown a brick there.
Yeah, he has. Lloyd's put it up from 3 thinking it's a sure thing, and
the old Ben
denied.
Simmons.
I've gone Josh Harris. I think
blown away.
the snapping and we haven't seen any really muffed punts. We haven't seen any really badly missed field goals. The only time we see a missed field goal is when Hopkins pulls it because it's too far. I'm going to give it to Josh Harris because apparently he's also a great leader in the...
The problem with this award is if you had to give it to him, you wouldn't know who to give it to.
No, he's the leader in the locker room, mate. That's all I understand him to be. So
what
good
number
on you,
is
Josh
he?
Harris. Giving you a shout out.
What number is Josh Harris?
00, who knows?
45? 43?
Who knows? Alistair, most impressive rookie award.
You can only be one person, right?
Yeah.
As you said, Zion has stepped in and he's played at a decent level. I think he's played somewhere in between decent and well.
Yeah.
Pretty good starter. Pretty good effort for a first round rookie. So Zion Johnson for me.
Yeah, I'd agree with that one too. Andy, you've got most improved. Where were we looking at here? This was an interesting one, I thought. So I'll be interested to hear your answer.
Yeah, I've been pretty captivated with his play throughout the year. I found him to be one of the most consistent on defense. He's shown promise in the last couple of years. Injuries have held him back. My most improved, Drew Tranquil.
Yes.
I think
Love
he's
it.
been awesome. As a leader as well, he's got that in him too.
Yeah, let's not trade away our best middle linebacker next year. Let's let him walk in free agency. I hope not.
Hey, we get him up and we just kick linebackers out. Rookie deal and gone. That's it.
And
And
Kaiser
then
White
sign
looks like
40-year-olds like Thomas Davis.
Kaiser White looks like he might go win a Super Bowl, so good on him. I got drawn the short straw here, and I got most disappointing, and we mentioned his name
Short straw.
earlier.
You've got plenty to choose from.
Yep.
Oh no, I've got two really bad categories. That's how I saw it. But most disappointing. We did mention him before. I'm going with Joshua Palmer. I was expecting a lot more out of him as our third receiver. I was hoping he would take the mantle from Keenan Allen as that possession receiver in between that in that intermediate passing game. Unfortunately, he's had injuries. But no, I'm not meaning to crap on this guy, but he's been my most disappointing. All right, let's get to some more interesting awards, and we have a little bit more fun. So we're going to go around the horn in this one. We'll start with Alistair, we'll go Andy, and then we'll finish with me, and I'll launch again. We're going to go with the least worst award. So this is a player that we thought, or you thought, was going to be bad, but actually hasn't played that badly, but is actually still pretty bad. Ali, who have you got?
It's Jerry Tillery. The guy is he's actually shit, but he's shown a few times this year, hey, actually, you're improving the last 3 weeks. You're grading pretty well. Oh, you applied a pressure. Oh, but there's a penalty. Oh, wait, you just got blown off the ball by a guard. So he's the least worst. He hasn't been Kenny Murray bad, but he's been Jerry Tillery bad. So well done for you.
Yeah. Andy, what do you got?
I had a list of somewhere between 5 and 10. I've gone with, and it's probably a bit of a low blow, but I've gone with Trey Pipkins. He's had moments of serviceability. He's been battling with his knee injury. There's times where he's a witch's hat and times where he's not a total piece of garbage. So that's how I criteriaed that award.
I love it. Well,
There's an Americanism there.
It was criteria. I love it.
Criteria.
That's a couple of beers and being a tradie.
I had it when I made this award. I had this guy in my mind. It's none other than the Mr. INT himself that won us the game against Cleveland, which is Mr. Alohi Gilman. So he's shown that, and it flashed hot. But other than that, Nas has taken back that spot. I'm not sure if he's going to be on the roster for much longer. The next one, and Alistair is a big fan, or we all are a big fan of this commentator, of Chris Carlinsworth. This is the Here's a Guy award. This is to the player who commentators always love to analyse each week, or always have a little tidbit of information. Alistair, who have you got?
I said, well, here's a guy who wears number 52. Yeah, he bats down passes, he defends the run, he rushes the passer, and he just does it all. And the cameras love him, and I love here's a guy I like to talk about. I think that's obvious. He's always front and centre in any kind of primetime game. It is Khalil Mack, who has played up to the name, so good on him. I love the fella.
Yes, I was going to say it's funny sometimes when you get the off-brand kind of CBS or NBC, or the Fox commentators, and they get the players' names wrong half the time. So I thought this is quite a funny award, Jack. It's Khalil Mack for me as well. I can't believe they traded just a second-round pick for this guy. Lots of talk about his contract, about the importance of him in this defense. Staley's guy. Derwin James was a close second for me.
Well, we've got the triumvirate there because I Khalil Mack too, so we won't hark on that too much, but that just shows how impressive he has been. All right, the second last one, we have got another Americanism on top of Andy's criterion, which I'm going to use from now on. I like that in the classroom, and then I won't have a job as an English teacher anymore. But we've got the stick-to-itiveness trophy, a player who's stuck with it no matter what so far. Al, what say you?
It's Foxy. For me, it's Foxy.
Nice.
He comes in, he tries really hard, he's applying pressures, second most pressures on the team, so Morgan Fox, he sticks to it, stick to the task.
Love it.
Mine is Michael Davis. Beto!
Fato.
He's gone from CB1 a couple of years ago, coming in, and then with the signing of Jackson, he's fallen off the starting lineup. And then we get injuries during games and now pretty permanently. And Vado stepped up and had a great game a few weeks ago in the second half when JC Jackson got benched. He's playing heaps of special teams. He's playing defense now. He's just working his way back into favour, so good on him.
I had Andy. You put him as which one did you put him as? The most improved, I think. Drew Tranquil for mine. Sticking with it. He's had a couple of injuries. That horrible injury that he had at the start of last year. He's come back. He's playing well. Good on you, Drew Tranquil, for sticking with it. The last one and the most important one out of all of it is the TDU Champ Trophy. So this is our own player of the year so far based on the following criteria. What player is the most Aussie in our eyes and why? Alistair, who have you got?
Well, what you need to know about Australians is we have these core beliefs and almost mythological traits, none of which I exemplify. It's you've got to be prepared to work hard and not take praise when it's earned. Be humble, just do your job, and just try your hardest for your mates. And I think there's a clear person who's satisfied those criteria. He's criteriaed it. And that's because sneakily the guy's picked up a 13.7% run-stop-win rate, which ranks 4th in the entire NFL of all players with 100 run defense snaps. And I'm giving it to you, Austin Johnson. You never complain. You hate the attention on yourself. You don't big note. And if you watch the tape, every single week, there's at least one play of a TFL or a sack or an amazing fighting two blockers. He's trying really hard out there. Austin Johnson, well done. TDU champ.
Nice.
My TDU champ trophy. Oh, he called me champ. I'm giving it to the guy that you gave the stick-to-itiveness trophy to, Al. I've got Morgan Fox. He strikes me as just a real blue-collar, get your nose dirty, work hard. Like you said, no complaints. Far less than I complain about my work. Good on you, Morgan Fox. Keep it up.
All right, mine I had in, when I thought about this, I thought about Gallipoli and I thought about going over the top of the trenches. A guy that is in the trenches and he's been asked to fill a giant gap. He's being asked every week to line up against some of the best pass rushers and will in the future some of the best pass rushers in the league. This is going to none other than Jamari Solier. He does it. He works hard. He's a young guy, and he's doing an incredible job, whatever the team asks of him. So, Jamari Solier, you are my TDU champion.
Nice. Thanks for sorting that out, Jack. That was good fun. Bit of humour, whilst there's a lot of grey going on in Chargers land at the moment. All right, Week 8 Falcons Preview. Not the Atlanta Seahawks, as I slipped up last week. Got a bit excited. Had a couple of beers. Chargers news from this week. On the injury front, we'll just quickly go over the repercussions again from the Seattle game. JC Jackson, obviously, out for the season. Mike Williams, high ankle sprain. This 4 to 6 week timeline, I think, is incredibly optimistic for me. Chris Rumph left the field with an MCL. Chat is today. He's actually trending pretty well, and it's not. He might miss this week, but it's not that bad. That seems to be the ailment of choice for the Chargers this year. Pipkins is hindered by it. We've lost Kelly still from it, and now Chris Rumph. So from Wednesday's practice, Al, as you said earlier, the most disappointing news to come out of Chargers camp this whole week is that Keenan Allen has re-aggravated his hamstring injury just over the bye week, as he tweeted. Dustin Hopkins is still sidelined. Rumph and Williams, obviously. Jerry Tillery did not practice with a back complaint. It's certainly not from carrying any of his teammates. So that's a bit of irony there. Donald Parham and Joshua Palmer have returned from the concussion protocol, so that's a little bit of promise for our passing game and offense as a whole. Look, from the press conferences, it's really interesting to hear Staley. We talked about a few things, how he's sort of trying to rationalise where we're at as a team, sort of to the fans. he feels that there weren't really many deals or options out there that would have worked for the Chargers in this moment. Confident in who we have to return from injury. So we've got Guyton for the season. Mike Williams, I reckon 6 to 8 from now. Keenan Allen, who knows what's going on. So we're left with Palmer, Carter, Bandy, Moore, Hightower, and Doss. Beg your pardon?
DOS.
That is, yeah, categorically, DOS. Microsoft DOS.
DOS X.
If you're like, is that just sort of packing it in for the next little while and just going, we might go 5 and 8 and then we'll see what happens. We'll run the table at the end when it's too late. So the focus on using these crises on that, if anything happens to DeAndre Carter, we're categorically fucked. We'll just drop that there. There seems to be a lot of focus and emphasis from Staley of, using these times of hardship to improve fortitude and resilience down the stretch. So when we get these guys, I don't know who's lying to him about how long they're all going to be out for, but there we go. Al, mate, what happened in the Falcons last game? You want to run us through that?
Very fun game to watch.
Wasn't it just?
Incredible. Falcons beat the Panthers in overtime 37-34, which takes the Falcons to 4-4 on the season. Interesting game. I mean, early on, Kyle Pitts has a touchdown in the red area. Then Lorenzo Carter has a 28-yard interception. You were talking about that last week, Jack. Carter has an interception return for a touchdown off an intended screen pass. So at halftime, Falcons were in front by 4 points. Then as the game developed, it's kind of back and forth. Algier had a screen pass for a touchdown. Deontay Foreman started getting hot, and DJ Moore started getting hot. Demir Bird, who I'm a little bit worried about, showcased extreme speed on a 47-yard touchdown pass from Mariota. The score is suddenly Atlanta up by 3 points with 2 minutes left. And then stuff got really interesting. The Falcons extend their lead to 6 points, 36 seconds left in the game, and we see one of the great deep passes from PJ Walker to DJ Moore. How he managed to get that beyond the double coverage and into DJ Moore's hands for the touchdown. Game over, right? Wrong. He's taken his helmet off and celebrated. I would have too. If ever there was a time to take your helmet off, that was it. But unfortunately, that's an unsportsmanlike conduct foul. Takes
It'd be okay, Alistair, because we couldn't see if you had your helmet on or not. Same shine.
Yes, well said. It's true. I'd be blinding spectators left, right, and centre. But unfortunately, the Carolina Panthers kicker has no idea where centre is. On the point after attempt,
Pinheiro.
He misses it. So all of a sudden we're going into our overtime, and then you can just tell when a kicker does not want to have another go for the rest of the day. This is one of those. So in overtime, the Panthers march down the field. They trot out Pinheiro for a 32-yard field goal attempt to win the game, and he butchers it. And the Falcons have one of the very best kickers in the league now, our old champion, Young Wei Koo, who they go straight down the field. He drills it from 41 yards. Falcons win 37-34. What a fantastic game. Any standout performers? Mariota actually passed the ball more than he usually does. He managed 250 yards and 3 touchdowns, but also threw a couple of picks. But really kind of went through the key performers as I broke down the game then. But real fun one to watch.
Yeah, it was good fun. Lots of laughs. I've got a workmate that has just jumped on the Carolina Panthers. I don't know why.
Ooh, yeah.
I think he was tossing up between them and the Bengals. And I said, the Bengals are looking good. This Joe Burrows, he's really something. Anyway, he jumped on the Panthers, and I revel in their shithousery. So that was good fun. Well, we're facing them. Let's go through some of the Falcons' strengths. I'll kick us off. I think just before we jump into sort of their strengths and weaknesses and what we're facing, it'd be prudent not to comment on their activity in the recent trade period. They kicked things off a couple of weeks ago, trading out linebacker Deion Jones to Cleveland. They've then shipped Calvin Ridley to Jacksonville, of all places, which is pretty fun, for a conditional 2023 5th or 6th round pick. Now, that's dependent, oddly, on his reinstatement date. So if he's reinstated before a certain time, the Falcons will receive a 5th. If it's after a certain date, then it's 6th. Availability.
Can I bet on that? Is there a market that I can bet on? Because I'd love to do that.
Nice one.
Not bad. See what you did there. So obviously his reinstatement following his suspension for gambling on a game against Jacksonville.
Correct.
The last exit from Falcons was, I think, safety Dean Marlowe, who's off to Buffalo. They've traded in Rashard Fenton, KC cornerback. We'll remember him fondly. So their strengths, run blocking seems to be a key strength to this offensive line.
Yep.
They've got when healthy, a great running back group. They're averaging 158.1 yards per game, good for 5th in the league. And opening up that aspect of their offense allows Arthur Smith to get a bit funny. They can use Mariota with his legs. He's had 280 yards on the ground, 3 rushing touchdowns of his own. Chargers linebackers are typically quite poor at recognising the RPO and getting out to the flat. I remember so vividly the Joe Burrow touchdown in the Cincy game last year, where he ran sort of 18 yards and was almost just free into the end zone. So, look, Mariota plays loose. He's had a few picks, but he's dangerous. 8 fumbles on the year is a real carrot for this offense, I think. It's a big aspect that this defense needs to turn around. Al, what about you, mate? What are you thinking on the...
A weird one, and as I totally agree, they're their big strengths, and they really like to run behind the right side of their line. Chris Lindstrom, very good.
Been huge.
Very good. And Caleb McGarry at right tackle, they're starting to get some returns on those first-round picks. That's their strength, the right side of the line. They run the ball really creatively. Mariota does a lot of the zone read stuff, as you said. They run outside zone. They use this pistol formation a lot, so we're going to have to be disciplined with our eyes at the linebacker core. A weird one that's a strength of theirs is they've actually got the least amount of missed tackles in the NFL on defense. So even though we'll get to it, they've got some real deficiencies on their defense. Dean Pease is a long-standing defensive coordinator with the Ravens for many, many, many years, and he at least has taught them sound fundamentals. So that's a sneaky strength that you might not have known about, listeners.
Yeah. I mean, if you've got nothing else to say, Andy, pretty much everything I've written down has been said, so should I run into the Falcons' weaknesses? I'll go from there. Let's do the Alistair PFF ratings. Worst pass rush in the league per PFF. 26th ranked coverage in the NFL per PFF. 27th ranked defense in the NFL per PFF. So other than Grady Jarrett on their defensive line, there's not much else. Arnold Ebiketie, Graham and Carter not doing what they have been drafted for. A couple of other things. I think maybe I'll leave the sort of the cornerbacks and maybe the linebacking core for someone else to talk about. We did talk about Chris Lindstrom being easily their strongest offensive lineman in the run game, but their whole line is positively shithouse in the pass protection game. One of the worst. Funnily enough, I looked at where Mariota has enjoyed throwing the ball and where he hasn't enjoyed throwing the ball.
The Jack special.
I love it. I love looking at that data on PFF.
Who throws left?
Well,
is that direction versus matchup on PFF?
Yeah. Mariota throws all of his picks in the middle of the field. Funnily enough, all of his picks this year have come across the middle. So 3 between the numbers 20 plus yards when he's throwing deep. 2 between the numbers in that 10 to 20 yard range, and then 1 in that 0 to 10 yard range. So I'm hoping that Tranquil, Murray, Nas, Derwin James have sticky fingers, and we can pick a couple off through the middle. Mariota loves the play action. He throws really well out of the play action, but is a really, really poor grade when he's throwing under pressure. And we did see that against the Panthers. That's definitely what I saw. So
come on,
I think, Atauchu, I think this is a little bit of game planning, but I think it sounds simple, but I reckon we give him some really exotic looks in blitz and rushes to cause some turnovers in some dynamic ways. What say you, Andy? Anything you want to cover there?
So I'm going to jump in. I just can't believe we haven't even brought it up. He's back. Jerry Atauchu, back as a Charger. We didn't even mention that. We've been so down on the trade period, we forgot a guy that we actually brought in. Welcome back, mate. I'm going to leave the secondary for Al, because I know you love a bit of cornerback chat. One funny little tidbit for me, and it's a weakness, is that Atlanta have fumbled the ball 12 times. Now, the really annoying part of that is that they've recovered it back on 8 instances. So for us who are able to force the fumbles but not be able to get the ball, it's an irksome stat. I'm sure there's Chargers fans out there like me that might have read that or hear this now and think, oh, yeah, fucking get the ball. Al, secondary, Falcons, what do you got?
I got nothing. No. They the concern is we might not have the cattle to exploit them at the minute. So the Falcons defense, it's not. The important thing to note is AJ Terrell is out with a hamstring. Looks like he's not playing, and Casey Hayward is not playing as well. So they've got guys off the practice squad. They've got Cornell Armstrong starting at cornerback, Darren Hall, the other side, who used to play for the Jets, Isaiah Oliver, and then their safeties are young guys, Richie Grant and Jalen Hawkins. This is a very average secondary. And in fact, they're not average, they're shit. They're 32nd in pass yardage allowed in the NFL, 25th for passing TDs, and they lead the league in air yards on completions, 1,300 yards. And if you watched last week, it's just boo, bombs away, DJ Moore, boo, bombs away. Guys are open by 30 yards. So if there's ever a get healthy game for this air offense, this is it. Let's attack it vigorously.
Yeah. Well, we'll just move straight into what will give us the best shot, our keys to victory. And that's a big point for me, is to exploit this weak secondary as early as possible and recommit to the running game.
Yep.
Let's use Isaiah Spiller more than once. I'm just a little bit concerned as to who we've got to spread it. But, if they're getting 30 yards open, hopefully Herbert can do his thing. Jack, what do you think is the best approach for us to knock this off in Atlanta?
Hear me now. Hear this. And if this happens, I don't know what I'm going to do. But if I see this Algeria, whatever the hell name he is, another rookie freaking quarterback.
You're kidding.
And he breaks another 50-yard run against us on the outside again. I am going to lose almost all my faith in this defense. Please, God, not another outside the numbers run for 50, 70-yard touchdown by a rookie quarterback, by a rookie running back. Please, God, please, no. Sorry. Alistair.
No, that's all right, man. I think the recipe on defense is fairly apparent, right? I think Tranquil has to play the spy and be mindful of Mariota taking off with his legs. You put Derwin on Kyle Pitts, you put Michael Davis on Drake London, and then you just let it rip. Don't buy eye candy, window dressing, all that stuff. Just play sound team defense. And then on offense, has to be. There's a good chance to exploit their linebackers in the passing game. They're bad all over the place. So Austin Eckler in the middle, wide receivers out wide. Tell you what, boys, I'm going to go straight into the result prediction. If we don't win this game, this season is over. But thankfully, we're going to win the game. Chargers 24, Falcons 17. Andy.
I've gone Chargers 27, Falcons 14.
This is where my maths fails me, so I'm going to say 5 touchdowns, so 35, I'll say 38 to 14.
Oh,
huge game.
Smoking. We would all absolutely love that. And no, we're not taking the piss. It's hard to get through weeks where you lose and then you don't have football. We've got to be positive. Got to stay positive. Trust the process. All right. Well, now we've got that to look forward to. I think it's a little bit of time for some hashtag TDU mailbag.
Say, Sirrat, whatever will be.
Ladies and gentlemen, hashtag TDU mailbag.
We're going to hear that song every time we do the mailbag. I'm sorry, Kev. I know it burns and poisons you, but, it's there. Thanks again for everyone who submitted a question. We had a few very good ones this week. And just in light of the time, because we've got some good ones to get to, I'm going to take 2 more as comments, but still acknowledge the fact that we got some contributions. So Tom Telesco's burner account on Twitter, he basically asked us what are our thoughts on the running game. And we went through that quite a bit. But he says, I really want to see Isaiah Spiller get 8 to 10 touches in a game. Love you, mates. Hashtag bold up. Thank you, Tom Telesco. We love you too. Well, actually, no, we hate Tom Telesco. We love the burner account and we love your positivity. Thanks for submitting the comment and question. Another good one we got from Give 'em Hell 54 from Bolts from the Blue. He asked, what are your thoughts on Telesco getting axed this off-season and letting the Little John era begin? Seems inevitable anyway. Part of me just wants them to get on with it so it can fail and it all blows up in their face. Then what does Dino do? Let the nepotism ride or realise maybe they need someone besides a yes man pulling the strings? Depressing question, but I think we'll take that more as a comment because we went into that during our earlier segment, what we're going to do.
God, that'd be fun though. I'd like to see him lose the team financially to Dee, his sister, and have to sell it before I see... Or we have to sit through 2 to 3 years of total shithousery watching all of that unfold. Play on.
Ash Holick, our favourite listener from Adelaide, says on Twitter, he asks, what are your thoughts on the All-In series not really seeming to convert to off-field movements? So this is right on that trade deadline. Maybe we can start with you, Jack. What are your thoughts on the All-In series not really seeming to be reflected in our off-field movements?
I just don't understand that question. So it's not covered in the All-In series, is that right?
No. I mean, we're called All-In, but we haven't really gone for it all in, have we? Because we didn't make a move before the trade deadline.
Yeah, sorry, I get that now. Yeah, good point, I guess. I still think All In is great viewing, and I don't want to take anything away from the Chargers media team. It'll make it very hard if we suddenly shit the bed and all of a sudden we're going, All In! 5-12! Okay. We're not losing every game we might win one more game. That's going to make it difficult. Yeah, maybe they need to go back to the drawing board and maybe come up with a less direct name for the...
To be fair, I've seen a lot of that's been low hanging fruit this last couple of weeks the last couple of days, with people on Twitter saying, can the Chargers even say this anymore? Like, can we stop branding ourselves with this? Because we're not all in. I think the reality is we bought into the idea of all in at the start of the year, or before the start of the year, when we brought in all the free agents and had a pretty good draft. And now they're just going, no, we've already done all in. We're just still there. We're just kind of hit a roadblock or two. So, stick with us. We're getting there, but yeah.
Our good buddy Kyle D. Dominicantanio very nicely decided to take a break during his honeymoon in Maui. So congratulations to you and Zaina, Kyle. I hope you're having a good time there. But he got a question in. He said, Keenan Allen's absence has clearly hurt the Chargers, but he's past 30 and his cap hit only continues to grow. 2 questions and we'll start with Jack. Jack, do you believe this season has increased his value in Tom and Brandon's eyes because of how off the offense looks without him? Or do you believe they'll feel pressure to replace him for a younger and healthier wide receiver because he hasn't been available?
If we keep Lombardi as play caller, then I think we see Keenan Allen staying in the building. If Lombardi and we bring in another offensive coordinator with a different scheme, I think Keenan Allen might leave.
That's a great answer.
Lombardi scheme, Keenan Allen is clearly integral. Mike Williams is not the X-receiver. Or for Mike Williams to be a productive X-receiver, you need Keenan Allen. So those are my thoughts.
Great answer. And then the second part of the question for you, Andy. Separately, how do you feel? What would you do regarding the wide receiver room in 2023? And the relevant context is Keenan has 2 years left on his deal after this one. He'd be due about 22 mil next year and about 26 the year after that. If you wanted to get rid of him at the end of this year, by cutting him, there'll be 4 million in dead cap, but you'd save 17.5. So what do you do with a wide receiver room at the end of the year?
Well, surely you'd look at an avenue to trade him rather than have to cut him and get someone else to pay his contract or an amount of. I think that it's a pretty clear signal that with the contract extension for Mike Williams, it is unfeasible in this league to pay 2 wide receivers $20 million when you're paying quarterbacks as much as they're getting paid these days, and we're quickly running out of time. The 5th-year option is not going to be a viable solution for Justin Herbert. He's going to be extended, and yeah, sure, they'll back end his kind of deal. We'll save a bit of money, pay him the same for the next couple of years on his extension, and then we'll start seeing trouble. But I'm not sure. I think, Jack, you made a really good point about his piece in Lombardi's offense, but I just don't see from a financial point that it's feasible to keep him unless we can restructure him. And okay. I think he's on the wrong side of 30, and these injuries are troublesome,
to say the least. All right, we've got 2 questions left, and this one's a ripper. It's from Tau837 from Bolts from the Blue. Tau says, one thing I think is interesting and would be interested in more opinions on. Daniel Popper, on his most recent Hops with Pop, characterised something I've felt ever since last season. He said, you can have the best defensive scheme ever on the whiteboard, but if you can't teach or communicate it to your players such that they can execute it, it doesn't matter. That's basically how I feel about Staley's defense right now. The excuse last year is he didn't have his guys. Now we've got his guys. And it means the holdover defensive players have had a year in the scheme now. Now, he's not advocating that we should fire Staley, but he does think that this issue is the biggest potentially legitimate reason why he could be fired at the end of this year. So Tao wants to hear what he says is some intelligent and thought-provoking discussion about this. I can't promise you that, Tao, but we'll start with maybe Jack on this one. What do you think about Staley and whether or not what he's teaching is transforming onto the field?
Well, if we go back to the start of the show when we looked at the I gave you those criteria and you judged him. By all of that, we would assume that Brandon Staley is a good teacher. We've gotten the right cattle in the building. They've only played 8 games with one another. Look at that how you will. You could say 8 games is enough.
7.
Or 7, I should say. We're about to play 8th. That's enough time for things to start clicking. You could say that that's nowhere near enough. If we go back to the timelines which I shared about the coaching and that 3-year window, I think we've got to think about having that 3-year window as the true test of how good a teacher Brandon Staley is. You're also dealing with holdovers from a lot of draft picks that are still playing on the field, like Kenneth Murray as a starting linebacker, probably wouldn't have been drafted in this system. There are depth at DT. You said Alistair. Jerry Tillery's there. I believe that Brandon Staley is a good teacher. I believe that this system does work, but he's just trying to figure out what to do without Aaron Donald and Jalen Ramsey. So how do you generate that production across your positional groups? That takes some time. That's all I'll say.
What do you think, Andy?
I think it's a really valid point by Tao, because Staley comes in as head coach as a defensive mastermind, might be an overshot considering his longevity as a coach and as a coordinator, but he comes in as this kind of wizard. And what did you say at the top? 27th ranked defense or something like that overall? It's not a good look, is it? It's really not a good look. Yeah, it's funny. We did that quiz and you'd say, yeah, he is a good teacher. So is it his method of communication, or is it the fact that all the players are nincompoops and can't understand what he's trying to get across? Is it too convoluted? Is it too much too soon? I'm not really sure what the answer or the solution is to it, but it is it's a very apparent problem.
That's okay. They pay him the big bucks.
I will say this, like anything in teaching, and this is coming from my experience myself, you might feel like you're in the weeds 3 months into a class. You might feel like you're in the weeds 6 months in. When you're a parent, you've been constantly trying to teach your child to do something, and you feel like you're beating your head against a brick wall, and it does look like that. And every day you're fighting this battle to try and turn around, or you're trying to teach this group of people or individual something. But then there's the moment that it all clicks and it all starts to work because you've built the relationship, because you've built the culture, because you've built that. That is something that I still believe we haven't seen just yet. We haven't seen that, and I'm hopefully waiting for it with bated breath. And I feel like Brandon Staley's waiting for that too. It's that moment, that click. And I think it's coming. That's all I can say, is that we're in the doldrums at the moment, and Brandon probably thinks he's in the doldrums, but we'll get there.
I'm going to tell you why it needs to be coming. I did a bit of homework for you, Tao. I think history is instructive. And I had a look at some of the current head coaches who came in as defensive coordinators to have a look. The ones who failed, the ones who got fired, what did their defenses look like? And the ones who have succeeded, what was the timeline? So I'll give you a few. Dennis Allen, when he first went to the Raiders in 2012, he joined the Raiders and their defense was graded 23rd the year before he arrived. When he arrived in 2012, they were graded 14th. And then in 2013, they were 30th. 2014 to 27th. Fired. Todd Bowles is another one. When he was with the Jets, he arrives, he takes the defense from 7th to 10th. Then in 2016, they're 28th. In 2017, they're 32nd. You're gone. I'll give you a few that have worked well. Mike Tomlin. The year before he arrived in Pittsburgh, under Dick LeBeau, they were 11th ranked defense. He arrives, they're 18th. The next year in 2008, they're first and they win the Super Bowl. Robert Saleh. The year before he arrived in New York, they were 24th under Greg Williams. He arrives last year. They finished 31st. Right now, they're first in the league. So they're like some failing ones, and there is the successful one. The one who I think Staley needs to try and match is Sean McDermott. You were saying it's interesting, Jack, because you went with win-loss. When McDermott took over the defense in Buffalo, they were graded 23rd. He took them to 16th in 2017. He took them to 13th in 2018. He took them to 9th in 2019. They've been up and up and up. Where Staley sits, he took over a 14th ranked Gus Bradley defense. Last year, they were 24th. Right now, they're 25th. There's not one example of a coach I've listed there who succeeded, who had 2 years in a row in the 20s when they've come in as a defensive savant. Or Mozart, I prefer to say defensive Mozart. So what we need to say, I think we need to see that grade climb from 25th to something like 15th by the end of the year. If we're sitting here in the late 20s at the end of the year, history would say it's all over for this guy. So just to round out the question. All right, our final questions, of course, they come from probably our favourite lister, Kev Diego from Bolts from the Blue. I'll start with a fun one. Jack, if your dad owned the Chargers and you were the Vice President of Football Operations, who would you have hired as head coach in 2021? If you can turn your mind back, I think...
Could I be revisionist and go, Mr. Brian Daboll? That's who I take.
Your daddy's the boss.
Or I'd be going Robert Saleh. I didn't mind a bit of Saleh. So yeah, Brian Daboll for me.
Okay, nice.
And we had him in the building too, remember? We had him in the building.
We did. We had him in the building. We were excited.
All right, Andy, for you, 10 games left. Chargers are 4-3. Where do we finish the season? Do we make playoffs?
Oh.
Right now, we'd be 7th place with a wild card. We're 4-3, 10 games left. Do we make the playoffs?
I had a real sad moment the other day, and I was thinking about our games left and thinking about the opponents that we've got coming up. The likes of the Dolphins, the 49ers, obviously the Chiefs again, the Broncos, the Raiders. We got the Titans as well. It's pretty grim. And I thought of the next 10 games in this moment, I thought we could go 3-7 here. We could go 3-7.
We could.
And because I don't actually see the situation getting any better. We're not magically going to get stars back in key positions. The reality is it can only get worse. You can only lose more players. So I'm not going to say that we're finishing 8-10 or 7-10. But it's not 12-5 or 13-4 like I thought it was at the start of the year. 4-3 now. Let's go. I'm going to say 9-8.
Okay,
At
so we
best.
go 5-5. Nice one. And Kev Diego's final question. I'll start, but feel free to jump in. If we say we end the year in that situation, Andy, let's say we end 9-8.
Oh, and on that, I think we're missing the playoffs with a 9-8 record. So
Okay.
just around that answer.
No, that's good. That's how we finish the year, okay? What changes can the Chargers make at the end of this season to improve next year's fortunes? I'm going to get us started. I like the idea of, if it doesn't work, moving on Lombardi, letting Shane Day become the offensive coordinator, and bringing in, soon to be fired, senior consultant Frank Reich. Come back to the Chargers where he used to be offensive coordinator. This is if he doesn't want to be an offensive coordinator somewhere else, because I'm sure he would be.
Soon
but if,
to be fired.
I think that's what's going to happen, man. And
Yeah.
Staley has lacked that mentor with head coaching experience like McVay had in Wade Phillips, right? Someone to bounce ideas off, and we all respect Frank Reich a heck of a lot on this podcast. He'd be a fantastic mentor to sit there as an offensive consultant, teaching Brandon. I'd love to welcome him back to the organisation. That's one thing I'd do.
Give me Fangio.
Yeah,
Give me Vic Fangio.
That's exactly where my mind goes as well.
Get him calling the defense and get Brandon Staley being the mastermind, 4th and 1, 4th and 2 guy. Give me Fangio.
Guess what? He's working again, you know. He's working at Philadelphia.
As an assistant.
He's
Dirty
over
dog.
there, you bastard. That's all from the hashtag TDU mailbag. Thank you to everyone who submitted a question. Great.
Absolutely.
Appreciated.
Thank you, team. Well, look, it's been a bit of a slog emotionally to go through the last week with what's happened and what hasn't happened, and just sort of let all the information settle and digest it. We've got another game coming up this week. We've got the Falcons. We've got to win this game. We've all picked it. Bolts are winning this one. Until next time, guys, thanks very much for joining us. We'll see you next time on the Thunder
folks.
Down Under Chargers podcast.
Bye.
Back pedals looking, firing. He's got Floyd turning. Got it. Zigzag. 10, 5, high step. Touchdown. San Diego.
Woo! Good night. Good night to all.